impossible time to send an 82-year-old narcissist to Taiwan. The U.S. has never been less ready for war, particularly for war with China. And the Biden administration has done everything it can to make certain that we are not ready for a war with China, or even with the Taliban. Biden has, since the day he took office, politicized and weakened the United States military systematically to the point we are not going to win a war against China. Sorry, that's true. General Mark Milley out there telling Congress that soldiers need to learn about white rage because otherwise they'll be unprepared for combat. Attacking people on the basis of their skin color? Right. Firing Navy SEALs because they won't get the vaccine? The healthiest people in the world? And they're fired because they won't get the vaccine. And then, just to make totally clear what the point is, and the point, of course, is humiliation and degradation, the destruction of centuries-old military traditions. Let's have drag shows on military bases. So no one, which they are now doing, no one should be surprised that people don't really want to join a military like that. A woke military. It's a joke. And the recruitment numbers show it. This is a crisis. The U.S. military is now signing up, no exaggeration, mentally deficient troops. That's not hyperbole. The Army used to ban recruits with a history of mental health problems, including self-mutilation, because of course you would. You're not going to hand people guns if they have a history of mental instability. But now DoD is issuing waivers for those recruits because they need them, as well as for recruits with aptitude issues. In other words, with an IQ so low, it would be very difficult to navigate modern war, as well as records of drug use. But all of this, lowering the standards to these points, are still not enough to make recruitment goals. The Army just told Congress it has to reduce its total force strength by 10,000 next year. By 2023, we will be 21,000 troops short. The Army has just met half of its recruiting goal so far this fiscal year, with only 2 months left. Why? 2 months left. They're halfway there. Well, again, because the military under Joe Biden, and no one wants to say this because it's so depressing, the last great meritocracy in the West is no longer a meritocracy. It's totally politicized, firing soldiers who didn't take the shot. More than 60,000 National Guard and Reserve soldiers just lost pay and benefits because they wouldn't take the shot, in the face of a mountain of evidence that the shot actually doesn't work and can hurt you, particularly if you're a young man, who comprise the overwhelming majority of our troops. Then the military once again telling white men that they're privileged and inherently evil. Major General Ed Thomas, the Air Force recruitment director, published an op-ed called, and we're not making this up, 86% of Air Force pilots are white men. Here's why this needs to change. Really? The thousands of Air Force pilots who died in the service of their country happen to be white men? Their families are now being informed actually they shouldn't have been flying anyway because of the race. So what does the Air Force want to become? Well, at the end of July, the Air Force hosts a diversity festival at Langley with a drag show featuring a performer called Harpy Daniels. Of course, kids are welcome. The Air Force is also paying for a bouncy house and face painting for the children to keep them occupied between all the drag shows. Meanwhile, in China, here's a video the PLA just put out this week, which shows a different kind of orientation. Watch this. Did you notice the difference? There were no trans admirals in that video. By the way, all of this is publicly available, so the next time you hear members of Congress, particularly Republican members of Congress, and we can think of quite a few of them, starting with Liz Cheney, lecturing you about our military, we support our military, and we're signing off on a brand new military budget. They've done nothing about this. The degradation of the U.S. military, politicized, woke, weak, that's happened with no oversight from the Congress. They just keep funding this stuff. They're implicated in this. There are also some pictures of China's Navy in the video you just saw. It turns out China's Navy is now larger than ours. That's a problem because once China controls the shipping lanes, China controls the economy of the world. According to the Spectator of London, this is worth thinking about, quote, if a naval blockade gave Beijing control of the export of Taiwan's semiconductor industry, which is huge, then Western leaders would find themselves beholden to China to keep their economies going. Russia's use of gas to dampen Western opposition to its actions in Ukraine would be dwarfed by China's ability to hold the world ransom through control of Taiwan's chips. In other words, if we went to war with China, and we're moving in that direction, the Chinese could simply turn off our economy because our people in charge of our country have made no preparations for this. The Chinese government could prevent us from having, cars that run, refrigerators, cell phones, computers. They would also be able to stop exports of antibiotics. According to the Council on Foreign Relations, Chinese pharmaceutical companies supply more than 90% of American antibiotics, as well as ibuprofen, take Advil, vitamin C, hydrocortisone, which treats asthma and arthritis. China supplies more than 70% of acetaminophen, often called Tylenol. What else does China make? Well, China makes everything, for example, that you need to transport goods across the country. China produces 96% of the world's shipping containers. They make 80% of the cranes that carry cargo from the ship to the dock. So because this has been coming at us in slow motion for a decade and a half and no one's done anything about it, we find ourselves right now, August 1st, 2022, incapable of winning a war against China. If this goes forward, we will lose. And yet, for some reason, the Biden administration has allowed Nancy Pelosi to go over there to provoke a military confrontation with China. Is there any other explanation other than they are rooting for the destruction of the United States? If there is one, text us. Some Republicans, by the way, are for this. They're for all war. Mike Gallagher, who represents Wisconsin, just said, quote, I think it would be in keeping with that track record and very useful for American diplomacy and foreign policy for the Speaker of the House to go to Taiwan. Yeah, whatever. Steve Shabbat, a Republican representing Ohio, agrees with that. Quote, I think it's important that we show solidarity with our ally Taiwan, he said. Oh, okay. Are we in a position to show solidarity with our ally Taiwan? And how far are we willing to take this? China has a lot of nuclear weapons. How does that factor into the equation? They're threatening it, so you think our leaders would have a response. Kareem Jean-Pierre has no idea what's going on, which is why today the White House put the Pentagon spokesman, John Kirby, at the podium. And here's what John Kirby said.
I guess I'm wondering, why did the president bother with this drama from the beginning? I mean, why not, rather than saying the military doesn't think it's a good idea to go, why not call the Chinese bluff or tell them to pound sand when they started bellyaching about the possibility of this trip, given, as you pointed out, there's no change in policy and there's precedent for Pelosi to visit Taiwan?
So what's the drama?
Have you watched the Bravies the last couple of weeks? I mean, there's been this question of...
Yeah, I've been here the last couple of weeks. I haven't seen any drama. I think you're manufacturing it with your question.
So oily. I think you're manufacturing drama with your question, says the Pentagon press secretary, after China has threatened to shoot down the Speaker of the House, to kill the Speaker of the House. I think you're manufacturing drama. No, the drama's inherent. So again, what the hell is going on? This seems like a systematic attempt to end the United States. How does the U.S. conceivably benefit from a war over Taiwan right now? There are probably pretty good reasons to prepare for a war with China, which may be inevitable, but that's not one of them.